Hi everyone. So in this particular PowerPoint, I'm going to talk about how do you understand your secondary data set. So to begin, first we have to familiarize ourselves with what this original data is and what this original study design is, and read all study related manuals. So I have uploaded one manual from a secondary data set which is available on Blackboard for you all to read, and that is how typically a study related manual is going to look like, which will tell you who this study population is. So it's very important that you should identify, is it an adult population? Is it a child population, adolescent, older adults? So you have to define or identify the population. Next, which is study variable? So which study variables are actually available in this particular data set, and how were they constructed or how were they collected? And next is you should read and understand the questionnaire and the survey items. So there is going to be a code book along with each secondary data set that you work with, and that code book will give you a glimpse of the study questionnaires, the survey items, how they were collected, and what numeric value is assigned to each response item. Second, we have to identify if survey weights are available. So we talked a lot about survey weights in the previous lecture. So you have to identify if this secondary data set gives you survey weights or not. And lastly, see if there is any missing data. So is there any missing data, which is very obvious there will be missing data in a secondary data set, especially with the data being so large. So first you have to identify, is there any, and second, if there is any, how was it handled? And if it was not handled by the secondary data set that you're working with, then you will have to work towards this missing data, especially if the missing data is more than 100 or 200. It is highly recommended that we use some kind of technique to work around with the missing data, and I will talk more about this further. So first and foremost, examine the interview questions and the study protocol. Identify if there is a skip pattern in the questions. So this is a sample question from NHANES. As I said, NHANES is National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. So the question here is, in the last 12 months, did you ever cut the size of your meals or skip meals because there wasn't enough food for money? And the options are yes, no, refused, which means they refuse to answer, or don't know, which means they probably don't remember. And then you assign a value for each response. Over here, you see it is 1, 2, 7, and 9. So this is how one construct was collected, or one particular variable was collected. And the next question is, if yes, how often did this happen? Now, this question is connected with the previous question, because if that participant is going to answer yes, which is 1 for the previous question, then they also have to answer, if yes, how often did this happen? Almost every month, some months, only 1 and 2 months, refused, and don't know. However, if the participant answered no, which means that they will not respond to this question, or if they refused or if they don't know, then they will not respond to this sub question which is related to the first question. And when this happens, that leads to some kind of data that is either missing in the data set, because obviously there is going to be no response for this particular question. And this is what is known as a skip pattern in questions, wherein if you answer yes, then move forward to the next question. If your answer is no, skip to question 3. So that is what is known as skip pattern in questions. It is important to identify how a particular construct or variable is being measured over time, especially secondary data sets are collected over a long period of time. So you have to see how that variable is being measured over time. It could be income, it could be education, it could be medical history, it could be any variable, but you have to see how it was being collected and measured over time. And is that same construct or is that same variable being measured across time? Which means that sometimes interview questions may get modified over time. So, in the beginning, if you were asking them how much money they were spending over food, then you would further ask them some different questions as to how much money they were spending on groceries and how much money they were spending on eating out. So, as the survey goes forward, some interview questions get modified uh, to be able to collect different kind of data and to be able to answer more research questions. Also, respondents may change over time, and this is very common, especially because some respondents may just choose not to be a part of the study anymore, so that is lost to follow up. And in an older population, some respondents may die over time, right? So in this case also, the respondents may change. And in some surveys, they may use proxy respondents. Again, this is very common in older people because older people have caretakers and guardians. So the extremes of the populations can use proxy respondents, especially if the participant themselves is not able to answer or not able to understand this entire survey. Then different measurement scales may be used across time. There could be a cognitive measurement scale, which is used for adult participants or older participants. There could be a psychometric test, which could be used. So, different types of scales are used across time. So, we have to see if these different scales are measuring that same variable or not. You have to keep checking the data for any updates. So if you are downloading that data from a particular website, which could be National Survey of Children's Health, which could be Enhance, it could be NHIS, whatever data you choose, you have to make sure that you work with the latest and most updated data. That's always recommended. And also, these are longitudinal studies, so new data sets are available with each wave of collection, which means each phase of collection. Okay, so each phase may include half a year, 1 year, 1.5 year. It depends on the design of the study. So next, coming to cleaning and preparing a secondary data. First and foremost, very important that you create a codebook. There will be a codebook which will be given to you by this secondary data set, and I will open up a website in the next videos to show you what a codebook looks like. But it is always and highly recommended that you create one for yourself, especially with the data that you are working with. Never alter the original variables, which means do not change the name of the original variables. Even if you're recoding variables, which means you are recoding, let's say, age, then just create a new name for that variable and call it new age or call it age 2, okay? But do not change the name of the original variable in the data set. Also, merge all potential data variables of interest into a new file. So if a data set has 340 variables and you only want to work with 77 variables out of the 340 variables, then it's highly recommended that you subset the data and only use those particular variables and merge them into a new file. Most importantly, as I said before, always look for missing data because missing data can actually create a lot of error in the study and you will lose precision and you will not get accurate results. So identify the missing values and label them. Whenever possible, use your prior knowledge of skip pattern questions to recode the missing data. So as I said, before, and as we saw previously, what skip pattern questions are. And you can use your prior knowledge, which means that if a particular group of people have answered that question, and if they have answered yes or no for that data which is missing for, let's say, 18 participants, and there are 84 participants who have answered that particular question. However, there is missing data for 18 participants out of your entire data set. Then you will go ahead and you will see the pattern uh, in which that particular question was answered, and you will try to fill in that missing data based on the knowledge that you have, using either that data or using the literature. And also you have to select a particular method for handling the missing data. So one, as I said over here, is using your prior knowledge or looking at what was answered by the other participants and trying to fill in those 18 missing values based on your prior knowledge. Or you select some kind of an imputation technique. So what I explained is also an imputation technique where you try to fill in the missing data. Although if it is just 18 missing, then I wouldn't really bother about filling in those missings unless your sample size is really small. So this is how you can clean and prepare data. And next, coming to recoding variables. So when you're recoding variables, you can dummy code the variables into binary variables, into values of 0 and 1. So the original data set may have a different value for that particular binary variable. It could have yes as 1 and no as 2. Whereas when you're working with the data, and if you want to recode or dummy code it, you can recode it into 1 and 2 as 0 and 1. Also, you have to recode the other categorical variables also if required, so that you know that everything in the data is same, and whenever you see a response as 0 in the data, it denotes to no, and 1 denotes to yes. You can also combine variables which are separate but are similar variables. For example, education and income can be combined into one variable, and you can call that variable as a SES variable, socioeconomic variable. And there is a statement in SAS which is the if then else statement, which can be used to combine variables. Also, you can recode variables with responses based on same units. So again, this is an example from Enhance, which shows how old were you when you smoked a cigarette for the first time. So if there were two different responses, either the participants can enter their age, or they can select their age as 1 to 18, refused, or don't know. So if there are two different responses, then you can actually recode them into a single response, and it is much easier to work with the data when you recode the variables into a single response, and it also avoids duplication of data. So that will be it for understanding the secondary data. Thank you.